The day was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like a pause between heartbeats. Keanu Reeves stepped out of the car and looked at the simple building in front of him. It was an orphanage, small and a little old, with faded paint and a playground that had seen years of children's laughter and tears. Beside him, Sandra Bullock stood with her hands gently clasped, her face calm but thoughtful. They had come here together because of a charity event. They were not here as celebrities. They were here as two human souls who knew what it meant to lose, to hurt, to rebuild. Both of them had walked through grief. Both of them had known loneliness. And both of them understood the importance of giving love where the world had forgotten to. As they walked inside, children ran in the hallway, their little footsteps echoing. Volunteers smiled and welcomed them warmly. Keanu bowed his head a little, the way he always did, humble, quiet, never wanting attention. Sandra smiled with warmth, like sunlight through windows. But then, something unexpected happened. A little girl, no more than 4 years old, stopped in front of Sandra. Her hair was messy, her eyes wide like she had seen a dream standing in front of her. The girl tugged on Sandra's sleeve, looked up, and said softly, with no hesitation, no fear, no thought, "Mama." The word floated into the air like a fragile leaf. Sandra froze. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled just a little. The room seemed to grow quiet around her, as if the world was waiting to see what she would do. Sandra knelt slowly, down to the girl's height. Her eyes softened, gentle but full of something deeper, something aching. "Hi there," she said softly. "What is your name?" But the little girl didn't answer the question. She wrapped her tiny arms around Sandra's neck and rested her head on her shoulder. Like she had been waiting. Like she had found something she had lost. Sandra closed her eyes. Her heart felt like it was both breaking and opening at the same time. Keanu watched quietly. He knew Sandra's story. He knew she had once dreamed of a big family. He knew she had carried love in her heart that had nowhere to go. He also knew that children sometimes see the truth long before adults do. The caretaker stepped forward gently. "She doesn't speak much," she explained softly. "She came here last year. We haven't found her family. She doesn't call anyone Mama. Except now." Sandra held the child closer, as if instinct was guiding her. Keanu felt something shift inside him. Not jealousy, not confusion. Something tender, something protective, something real. He stepped closer and placed his hand gently over Sandra's hand that was holding the little girl. She looked up. Their eyes met. No words. Only understanding. And in that moment, without planning it, without meaning to, the story of all three of their lives began to change. The little girl stayed in Sandra's arms, holding on as if she had known her forever. Sandra continued to kneel on the floor, gently rocking her without even thinking about it. It was not something practiced or forced. It was something natural, silent, like a memory of love her heart still remembered how to give. Keanu stayed beside them, quiet, his presence steady like a calm hand on a shaking shoulder. He wasn't saying anything, but he didn't need to. His silence was comfort, not distance. The caretaker spoke softly, careful not to break the fragile moment. "Her name is Leela. We believe she is about 4 years old. She was found near a bus station, alone. She didn't speak for weeks. When we tried to ask her about her family, she just cried. She doesn't call anyone Mama." This is the first time. Sandra looked down at the little girl, who was resting her head against her chest. She brushed her fingers lightly through Lila's hair. "Leela," she whispered softly. "You are safe." Lila's small fingers tightened around the fabric of Sandra's shirt. Keanu felt something stir in his chest. He knew Sandra had so much love inside her, a love that had never been given to a child of her own. He thought of her past, the pain she had carried, the silent nights where she pretended she was fine. He remembered his own grief, his own lost chances, 2 lives marked by love that never had a home. The caretaker continued, "She rarely speaks, but she watches everyone. She feels deeply. She chooses who she trusts." Sandra kissed the top of Lila's head, her voice gentle. "Thank you for trusting me." Leela didn't answer, but her tiny body relaxed in her arms. That was answer enough. After a few moments, the other children began to gather round. They were curious, smiling, laughing softly. Children have a way of accepting things the world questions. They see hearts, not doubts. One boy tugged at Keanu's jacket, looking up with bright eyes. "Are you her papa?" he asked plainly. Keanu blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected the question. Sandra looked up at him quickly, unsure how he would respond. Keanu knelt down to the boy's height. His voice was gentle, warm. "I am someone who cares," he said. The boy nodded, satisfied with the answer, and ran off to play. But the words remained in the air. Someone who cares. They were simple, but they were true. After some time, Sandra stood slowly, still holding Leela. Keanu placed his hand softly near her back, steadying her without a word. They walked together to the courtyard outside, where sunlight touched the leaves, where the world felt softer. The three of them sat on a bench. Sandra held Leela. Keanu sat beside them. The moment felt like it belonged to a different part of life, a quiet part, a healing part. Sandra looked at Keanu, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect this," she said. Keanu nodded. Double quotes the most important things. "We never expect." Leela stirred gently, her tiny hand reaching out, finding Keanu's fingers. She held his hand to and he did not let go. The sun warmed the courtyard as they sat there. The three of them connected by something invisible but strong. Leela rested quietly, her small hand still holding Keanu's. It was such a simple gesture, but it carried a weight that neither he nor Sandra could ignore. Sometimes the heart makes decisions long before the mind understands. A volunteer approached gently, handing a small blanket. Sandra thanked her softly and wrapped it around Lila's shoulders. The child leaned closer, her head tucked into the space between Sandra's neck and shoulder. It felt natural, as if she belonged there. Keanu watched them, his expression thoughtful, not overwhelmed, not confused, just quietly moved. His whole life, he had known what it was like to lose people he loved. He had known how grief could carve emptiness inside the heart. But in this moment, he was seeing something else. He was seeing how love could return. Not the same love, but a new one. Fragile, gentle, growing. Sandra looked at Leela with a tenderness that came from deep inside her. "She is so small," she whispered. "So quiet, like she learned to hide her voice to survive." Keanu nodded. Some people hide their voice until they feel safe. Those words were not about Leela alone. They were about both of them. The caretaker stepped out to join them. Her face was kind, but there was something serious in her eyes. "Leela will need someone stable," she said softly. "Someone who can help her learn to speak again. Someone who will stay." Sandra held Leela closer. Keanu listened, his chest tightening just slightly. "We have had families come and go." The caretaker continued. "Many people want to adopt, but not everyone understands what trauma does to a child. Leela does not need saving. She needs patience, presence, love without conditions." The words settled in the air like dust slowly falling. Sandra looked at Keanu. Her eyes were full of something deep, something questioning, something hopeful and scared at the same time. "Keanu," she said softly, Do you think we could be part of her healing?" She was not asking him to decide for her. She was asking him to walk with her. Keanu's single quotes as breath came slow. He looked at Leela, her tiny fingers curled around his. He looked at Sandra, her heart open in a way he had not seen in years. He looked at the courtyard, the old building, the tired swing set, the place where children learn to wait for someone to choose them. Keanu had spent so much of his life losing, letting go, grieving quietly. But life sometimes gives back, not to erase the pain, but to show that love remains possible. He spoke softly, but every word was steady. "We do not have to know everything today. We only have to stay. We only have to show up, one day at a time." Sandra exhaled softly, relief, trust, something like hope. Leela shifted in her arms and whispered a single sound, small and quiet. "Ma." Not a full word, but a beginning. Keanu reached out and gently placed his hand over their hands. They were no longer three separate lives. They were becoming something together. The drive back from the orphanage was quiet, but it was not an empty silence. It was the kind of silence that holds something new, something fragile that both hearts are afraid to touch too quickly. Sandra sat in the back seat with Leela sleeping against her. her small hands still wrapped in Sandra's shirt. Keanu drove, his eyes focused on the road, but his thoughts were somewhere deeper. He kept glancing in the mirror, watching the two of them. Sandra's face was soft, full of something he had not seen in her in a long time. Not joy exactly, not sadness, something in between. A feeling of being needed, a feeling of being chosen. And Leela, even in sleep, looked peaceful for the first time that day. When they arrived at Sandra's home, the evening sky was turning orange. They moved carefully, gently, as if any sudden movement could break the moment. Sandra carried Leela inside and laid her on the couch, covering her with a blanket. Keanu watched from the doorway, his hands in his pockets. For a while, they just stood there, looking at the child who had changed their day, and maybe their lives. Sandra finally spoke in a quiet voice. "I don't know what this means yet." Keanu nodded. "We don't have to know right away." She sat down slowly, her hands shaking just a little. "But when she called me Mama, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Like there was a missing piece I didn't even know how to look for." Keanu sat beside her. Not too close, not too far, just close enough to be there. "You have always had that love in you," he said. "You just needed somewhere to give it." Sandra turned her face toward him, her eyes soft and emotional. "And you? What did you feel when she held your hand?" Keanu looked down at his hands, remembering the small warmth of Lila's fingers. "I felt like I was being trusted, like she saw something good in me without needing a reason." His voice grew softer. "I haven't been trusted like that in a long time." Sandra understood. Keanu had loved and lost. He had carried grief with grace, but grief was still weight. And sometimes weight becomes loneliness, even when surrounded by people. She reached out and placed her hand gently over his. Not asking, not expecting, just sharing the moment. Keanu looked at her. Something unspoken passing between them. Something real, something steady. They sat like that, hand in hand, while Leela slept just a few steps away. Then suddenly, Leela stirred. Her small eyes opened, confused for a moment, searching. Sandra moved toward her, but Leela reached her arms out, not just to Sandra, to both of them. Keanu stood and walked to her. Sandra lifted Leela, and the little girl rested one hand on Sandra's shoulder, one hand on Keanu's, and for the first time, the three of them formed a circle. No words. Just connection. Just belonging. Just the beginning of something unexpected and deeply real. The next few days passed slowly, like time itself was moving carefully so nothing would break. Sandra and Keanu returned to the orphanage each morning. They did not announce anything. They did not make big promises. They just showed up, the same way love starts, quietly. Leela began to smile more. Not big smiles, just small ones, soft like sunlight touching a window. She still did not speak much, but she didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. She followed Sandra everywhere, always close enough to touch her, and she would reach for Keanu's hand every time he walked into the room. It was as if she knew they belonged together before they did. One afternoon, Sandra and Keanu sat in the playroom while the children painted. Leela sat in Sandra's lap, holding a crayon, drawing slow circles. Keanu watched her, a gentle smile on his face. He hadn't smiled like that in a long time. The caretaker stepped inside and watched the three of them for a moment before speaking. She said softly, "Children like Leela don't attach this quickly unless their heart recognizes safety." Sandra looked down at Leela, her voice quiet. "She trusts us." The caretaker nodded. "Yes, and trust like that. It is a kind of love." Keanu's chest tightened, like something warm had opened inside him. Later, they walked outside to the playground. Leela sat on the swing, her small legs dangling. Sandra pushed her gently, slow and careful, like she was afraid to push too hard and break the moment. Keanu stood beside them, his hands in his pockets, his expression soft. "She belongs with someone," Sandra said quietly, watching the child laugh softly. Keanu nodded. "She does." Sandra hesitated. Her heart felt heavy, not with sadness, but with longing, with hope she was afraid to voice. "Keanu, we could try," she whispered. "Not because we have to, not because of the headlines, but because it feels right." He looked at her, holding her gaze with steady eyes. He did not rush. He did not run. He did not hide. I know, he said. I feel it too. There was no dramatic confession, no sudden decision, just truth, simple and quiet. But then something unexpected happened. Leela stopped the swing and looked at them. Her eyes were big and serious, filled with something older than her years. She reached out both her hands, one to Sandra, one to Keanu. She whispered, voice small and tender, home. The word shook them both. Sandra single quotes S hand pressed to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. Keanu felt something break inside him. But it was the kind of breaking that makes room for new love to grow. He knelt down in front of Leela. Sandra knelt beside him. Together, they held her hands. Keanu spoke softly. We don't know everything yet, but we will learn, together, one day at a time. Leela nodded, her tiny forehead resting against theirs. And for a moment, the world felt still. No noise. No rumors. No fear. Just three hearts beginning to feel like one. Days turned into weeks, and what began as a quiet moment in an orphanage slowly became a new chapter. None of them had planned for. Sandra and Keanu did not rush anything. They met with counselors, spoke with adoption workers, and learned how trauma shapes a child's heart. They listened more than they spoke. They showed up every day. They stayed. That was what mattered. Leela changed too. Her silence softened. Her eyes brightened. She began to laugh sometimes, small soft laughs that sounded like the beginning of flowers blooming. She still didn't talk much, but she did not need to. She had found safety. She had found hands that did not let go. One evening, the three of them were sitting in Sandra's living room. Leela sat on the floor, drawing with crayons. Sandra watched her with a gentle smile, while Keanu sat nearby, tuning an old guitar with slow, steady movements. Leela crawled into his lap without saying anything. Keanu looked surprised for a moment, then smiled, soft and warm. Sandra watched them, her eyes full of something deep, something that looked like peace. Keanu played a slow tune, quiet and simple, the kind of tune you play when words are too heavy. Leela rested her cheek against his chest and closed her eyes. Sandra sat beside them, leaning her head against Keanu's shoulder. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Love does not always come with noise. Sometimes it is simply the warmth of breathing together. After a while, Keanu set the guitar down and looked at Sandra. Are you sure? He asked. He was not asking out of doubt. He was asking out of respect. He always respected what was fragile. Sandra nodded. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. She looked at Leela, then back at Keanu. What about you? Keanu took a breath, slow and steady, as if feeling every step of the moment. I have spent a lot of my life losing, he said softly. But maybe this time, I get to keep something. Maybe this time. Love stays. Sandra reached for his hand. Leela reached for both of theirs. The next morning, they returned to the orphanage. The caretaker greeted them with a warm smile, as if she already knew what they were there to say. Sandra and Keanu sat down across from her, holding Leela between them. Sandra spoke first, her voice steady. We want to begin the adoption process. The caretaker's eyes glowed with gentle joy. She nodded slowly, almost like a blessing. I think she has been waiting for you, she said. Leela pressed her forehead to Sandra's cheek. Then she turned and placed her tiny hand on Keanu's. Her eyes looked into his, clear and brave. She whispered, with her soft little voice, home. Keanu felt his heart break open in the best way, not grief, not pain. But the quiet beginning of a new life. It wouldn't be easy. There would be paperwork. There would be challenges. There would be days when healing felt slow. But they would face it together. Sandra. Keanu. Leela. A family born not from blood, but from love that chose itself.